What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected legends, an actor known for class, humility, and timeless wisdom, steps onto a talk show famous for its loud opinions and unpredictable clashes? That's exactly what happened when Michael Caine appeared on Joy Behar's show, expecting a friendly chat about his long career, and instead found himself in the middle of a heated confrontation that left the audience frozen in disbelief. The tension started before most people even noticed. Joy welcomed him with her trademark smile, the one that hides just a hint of challenge. The crowd cheered as Michael adjusted his jacket, gave a polite nod, and took his seat. For a moment, it looked like every other daytime interview: light jokes, small talk, and a little laughter. But behind the cameras, something else was brewing. Joy's tone shifted quickly from playful to pointed. "Michael," she began, leaning forward, "you've said before that Hollywood's gone soft, that actors today don't know hard work. Isn't that a bit unfair?" The room went quiet. Michael smiled, the kind of calm smile that carries decades of experience. "Well," he said slowly, "I've seen a lot of change. Not all of it for the better." Laughter rippled from the audience, but it wasn't friendly anymore. It had an edge. The energy shifted, the air thick with discomfort. Joy's smirk deepened. She knew she had touched a nerve. Within seconds, a simple question turned into something else: a battle of worlds. The veteran actor who built his life on discipline and dignity was now facing a host who thrived on confrontation, and neither of them was ready to back down. The conversation moved forward, but the atmosphere never quite recovered. Joy shuffled her notes, pretending to laugh off the awkwardness, while Michael sat still, his eyes steady and unreadable. "Let's talk about your new book," Joy said, flashing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You've written about growing up poor in London. Quite the contrast from your Hollywood life now, isn't it?" Michael nodded. "Yes," he replied quietly, "but I've never forgotten where I came from." "That's what keeps me grounded," Joy leaned in. "But surely times have changed. Don't you think it's easier now for young actors to make it?" Michael chuckled softly. "Easier?" He shook his head. "When I started, we didn't have agents or fancy schools. We had rent to pay and no second chances." The crowd murmured, some clapped, others whispered. Joy caught the shift and pushed harder. "So you're saying success today isn't earned?" she asked sharply. Michael's expression stayed calm, but his tone cooled. "I'm saying respect is earned, Ms. Behar, and sometimes people forget that." For a moment, silence filled the room. The studio lights seemed brighter, harsher. Joy blinked, clearly unprepared for the weight of his answer. Behind the cameras, producers exchanged uneasy looks. Something told them this interview wasn't going where they expected, and in that moment, between a legend's calm and a host's pride, the sparks of a full-blown clash had already begun to ignite. By now, the tension was impossible to ignore. The studio audience had fallen into that uneasy silence that happens when something real begins to surface on live television. Joy adjusted her chair, crossing her arms as if to reclaim control. "So, Michael," she said, her tone suddenly sharper, "you talk a lot about respect and hard work, but don't you think that sounds a little outdated?" Michael raised an eyebrow. "Outdated?" he repeated softly. "Respect doesn't go out of style, Joy. It's just harder to find these days." The crowd reacted, a mix of nervous laughter and scattered applause. Joy's smile faltered for the first time. She tried to laugh it off. "Oh, come on, you sound like my grandfather." But Michael didn't flinch. His voice carried the weight of someone who had lived through war, loss, and decades of hard-won success. "Maybe your grandfather had a point," he said calmly. People used to listen before they argued. A hush fell. Even Joy seemed momentarily taken aback. "Are you saying people like me don't listen?" she asked, her tone half joking, half defensive. Michael leaned forward slightly. "I'm saying that sometimes talk shows mistake noise for truth." Gasps rippled through the audience. One of Joy's co-hosts tried to step in, but Joy lifted a hand, determined to hold her ground. "Well, Michael," she said coolly, "on this show we speak our minds." Michael gave a faint smile. "And I admire that. But speaking your mind doesn't always mean you're right." The audience erupted, some cheering, others booing. The air buzzed with electricity. Joy forced a grin, But her eyes said it all. This interview had turned into a duel, and Michael Caine had just drawn first blood. The tension snapped. Joy Behar leaned forward, her tone sharper than ever. "You know, Michael," she said, forcing a laugh, "you sound like every man who thinks the world was better before people had opinions." Michael didn't blink. "And you sound," he replied evenly, "like someone who confuses opinions with wisdom." The audience gasped. The moment hung in the air, that fragile second when everyone wonders if they're still watching a show or witnessing something far too real. Joy's jaw tightened. "I've been doing this for years," she fired back. "I know how to handle strong personalities," Michael smiled politely. "Then perhaps it's time to handle one more." Laughter broke out, not the kind Joy liked. It was nervous, almost apologetic. The crew's cameras zoomed in on her face, trying to capture every flicker of emotion. Joy tried to regain control, flipping to a lighter question from her notes, but Michael interrupted gently. "No need to change the subject," he said softly. "You asked me about respect. I think we're seeing what it looks like when it's missing." The room fell silent again. Even Joy's co-hosts looked down, unsure how to recover. The live feed's producer whispered frantically into her earpiece, "We need to cut soon." But Joy ignored it. Her pride wouldn't let her back down, and Michael's calm composure only made it worse. In that moment, the interview wasn't about movies or fame anymore. It had become something far bigger. A battle between truth and ego, playing out on live television. Joy forced a smile, her voice tight. "All right," she said, glancing at the camera. "We're almost out of time, but—" Michael stood slowly, buttoning his jacket with deliberate calm. "No, Joy," he interrupted gently. "I think we're exactly out of time." The audience gasped. For a moment, even the cameras seemed to hesitate, unsure whether to follow him or stay on Joy. She blinked, caught between anger and disbelief. "Michael, we're live." He turned to her, his tone measured but firm. "Then let them see what live honesty looks like." Without another word, he nodded to the crowd and began to walk off. The studio was silent except for the echo of his footsteps. A few audience members started clapping, softly at first, then louder. Joy sat frozen in her chair, the practiced grin fading from her face. The producers scrambled, cutting to a commercial far earlier than planned. As the screen faded, the tension hung like smoke, the kind of silence that only truth can leave behind. And just like that, Michael Caine left Joy Behar's stage, not defeated, but dignified. When the cameras cut and the commercials rolled, the studio was still in shock. Crew members whispered nervously, unsure what to say. Joy Behar sat perfectly still, staring at the empty chair across from her, the one Michael Caine had just walked away from. Within minutes, clips of the exchange hit social media. Viewers around the world began to react. Some called Joy arrogant, others said Michael was too harsh. But everyone agreed on one thing. They had just witnessed something real. By evening, headlines exploded across every platform. Michael Caine walks out of Joy Behar interview live on air. The footage spread like wildfire. Comment sections filled with debate, but underneath the noise was a simple truth. People were moved by Caine's composure, his refusal to argue, his quiet dignity in the face of provocation. Back in London, reporters caught him outside a theater event the next day. When asked about the incident, he smiled and said only, "You don't raise your voice when you know you're right." That single line went viral, echoing everywhere from TikTok to talk radio. And while Joy Behar's show continued as usual, something had changed. The moment reminded millions that true respect doesn't shout. It stands, it walks, and it leaves in silence. The clip of Michael Caine's calm walk-off didn't just make headlines, it started conversations. In an era where shouting often wins attention, his silence spoke louder than words. It wasn't about ego or embarrassment. It was about principle. The world saw a man who refused to trade dignity for applause. And that's why this moment hit differently. It reminded millions of viewers that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it simply stands up, says enough, and walks away. So here's the question. In a world full of noise, how many of us would have done the same? Would we choose the last word or the higher ground? Michael Caine didn't need to win the argument. He won the moment. And that's what people remember. If this story moved you, if you believe that respect and integrity still matter, make sure to hit subscribe, drop a comment, and share your thoughts below. Because these are the stories that remind us. Fame fades, noise fades, but character lasts forever. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong. It was a lesson in grace. And that's something the world could use a little more of.